Alright YouTube, Jared Juggernaut 1 here. Now I did kind of say in the vid that there were a few things I kind of wanted to talk about from this. There's a lot I could go over. First off, this is kind of going to be, I guess, a pre-regional discussion. This is going to be like both a pre-regional discussion and pretty much what I did about a year ago from now. I opted to do what I called the hero discussion because when the format came around, I realized there were a bunch of different hero decks I wanted to give a shot, and I ultimately settled on one thanks to my friend Raph. But I kind of discussed the options with them, and while the options are far different this time around, I definitely do want to discuss them now, and because I'm most likely going to be playing one particular build of this as of now. I'm not going to talk about my list, but you'll have a good enough idea of what the list is based on what I tell you. Now the first deck, it's kind of an option, is of course Bubble Beat. Now of course there are two variants of this, one of which I've talked about before. I've talked about both actually. The first one is traditional Bubble Beat, which is basically the 7 monsters, and you play a lot more back row, but your deck doesn't have the consistency and same amount of explosiveness. Then you have the Hero Lives build. The Hero Lives build is very different because it runs a lot more back row destruction, less back row protection, and sometimes a bit more monsters. But regardless, the emphasis is different and it's more on Stratos than ever. This deck, well, first off, with traditional Bubble Beat, I had problems with this deck. Very serious problems. I never really liked it very much because I found myself always having very awkward hands. The hands you had could be very explosive, but like I said, because you never played any back row removal really, you were in a tight spot a lot of times. It was just kind of easy to screw this deck over, and that was really the problem. Okay, you had Alias with Gemini Spark, big deal. The problem was Bubble Man was more or less a dead card. It wasn't a standalone card, which was always my problem with the deck. The Hero Lives build better, but it still suffers from some similar problems. One is awkward hands, but one problem that I could never get over as I was testing it more and more. The deck's linearity causes it to run, and limited resources, low amount of monsters, cause it to run out of steam very fast. I found myself losing because I would run out of targets run out of Bubble Mans, run out of heroes, and I just wouldn't be able to do much. Yeah, you can run Warrior Returning Alive and Call the Haunted, but the problem is because of the cards, most of the cards the combos you make require 2 cards. Call isn't really going to get you back in the game, even if it can get back an Xyz monster. So those problems exist with each of these decks. Kind of feel bad. I picked up a playset of a Hero Lives, but I'm not even going to really need them. But at the same time, you kind of never know when it could come in handy again. I mean, it's only at 2, but I can kind of manage. The next build I want to talk about, Masked Heroes. I was testing Masked Heroes after I saw a build on on a blog, on a person's blog. It was good, but then the person even admitted later on that he was finding, because of the ban list, an anti-meta build was better. Masked Hero builds, they still suffer from the same flaws. You can, with playing a Hero Lives, 2 copies of it, made the deck more consistent, but the problem that still remained was that it was very reliant on drawing your power cards. Not so reliant. You could still, running Bubble Man was a necessity because you needed to be less reliant on your power cards, but it still had issues. There were a bunch of plays you could make, but you weren't always going to know what that was. It wasn't all around the best deck, I would say, also, because you didn't run so many back row, and on top of that, you didn't, the only card that you could run, which was game breaking, but was Rivalry of Warlords, but that's another story. Overall, I just think the deck, it kind of has potential. People would give it a shot, but because I think there's a better deck right now, a better hero deck, it's not really gonna happen. The only player I've ever seen top with a masked hero like with the well, a guy top Toronto, meaning one mask change in his bubble beat, but that's different. But it's just not a card that's gonna like you're not gonna see someone playing a deck with 3 copies, or at least topping. So that's the big deal with it. The real build that I'm kind of wanted to talk about because I think it's the best build right now, Hero Beat. Pretty straightforward. Pretty much like the thing about it is it's a control deck, it's powerful. It's a better deck now because of the slow down meta. There's a lot of reasons to love this deck. I'm probably going to run this at regionals just because I feel very comfortable playing the deck, and I'm feeling very satisfied the more I keep testing with it. I don't think my build is finalized because I'm still contemplating trying to make room for an Ocean, and I hate to say it, Roy St. Clair actually is the person who made me think that, because you know what? I keep thinking to myself, I want to run another target, and the thing is, I'm not playing Skill Drain in my build right now, just like a lot of other players. That's part of the discussion. Even though Skill Drain's a great card, don't get me wrong. One thing I noticed from YCS Toronto was that, players like Joe Orlando and Sean Montague, they ran very similar builds, didn't main it. Daniel Lamartina, he chose to side it. Sean opted to only side 1 copy. They were both talking about it's not as good as it once was. And I think I understand part of the logic behind that. You see, Skill Drain, when you run the Skill Drain and the Bribes, you're running cards that sort of hurt your opponent, but you don't stop them necessarily from getting out big monsters, which are the deck's biggest problem, really. That's the actual thing you have to worry about. Sure, Skill Drain can stop decks like Windups for going loop-de-loop to herp-de-derp, but it doesn't really matter all that much because, but they could still get around it with cards like MST. If you're not playing cards like Skill Drain, they're not going to just blind MST you usually. If you take the 2 Skill Drain and the 2 Dark Bribes out of the deck, you're given room to make... What happens there? You're basically given 4 now available spots for cards that are actually effective removal. I like that a lot because I love the idea of being able to... I really like the idea of playing... sorry for losing my train of thought here. I really like the idea of playing... crap, oh my goodness, sorry. But I really like the idea of playing cards that don't possibly stall my opponent, but actually remove the threat from the equation. And cards like Compulsory Evacuation Device, Bottomless, they do that. They end up being very useful. Now, by not playing Skill Drain also, it makes more sense to play a card like Ocean, which I ended up playing at the last regional I used Heroes at. I like Ocean even though it does have its flaws, like it's only 1500 attack, but I love the fact that it also gives me access to Ab-Zero when I really need it. Sure, drawing Ocean by himself without drawing any other heroes is annoying, but at the same time I feel like I draw Stratos and Alias often enough, where it works out. You run your 3 search cards that immediately get it, and yeah, again, having the extra hero maybe is another way of using another hero you can use Super Poly with. There you go. Guess it's just I'm really not sure where this deck's gonna head, but it looks like this is what I'm gonna be running at the regional, unless I miraculously find a deck that I feel more comfortable playing, and I actually think is more consistent, because Hero Beat is just so consistent. It's actually it may not seem that way, but it's so consistent in that it's just so easy to get out, to get up just a very playable hand and going. And it took me a while to really realize that and fully grasp that aspect of it. But there are other decks where it's like you have to draw multiple cards to really get your deck going, and that's problematic. I don't want to have to worry about that sort of thing. So that's basically the hero discussion. I've got some sleeving and, well, not sleeving, but I have some organizing to do for my locals tomorrow. First time I'm going, unless this goes up tomorrow on Friday, which means it'll be today. But yeah, my only time I'm gonna get to test in real life before I go to the regional, aside from so maybe I'll do some play testing there. If any of you guys are going to the Kings Games Regional, I am going to do a vid on Saturday. It's taking place on Sunday. So hopefully you guys got something out of this. Tell me what you guys think about heroes, just the various decks in general. I know I could have talked about Destiny Heroes, but I'm not having a discussion on that because until I find a deck that actually utilizes the 3D draw well, I do not feel like having a discussion on that. So until then, guys, please leave a like and peace.